On October 30th, 2025, I woke up to a concerning amount of text messages, which for me is any number over maybe 1. Usually, when there's a notification flood waiting for me in the morning, it means one of two things. I slept through an earth-shattering, life-ruining emergency, or American rock band My Chemical Romance announced something. Anything. This time, however, it was neither. In fact, I probably would have been a lot less surprised if the messages were warning me of impending nuclear war. Instead, that morning, John, last major free content update Nintendo, had announced the ACNH 3.0 update. Over 4 years removed from the supposed final update to the game, New Horizons' dimming flame was thrown a few more logs and given a gentle poke with a stick. The Direct promised a whole new toolkit of features and faces. Villagers, furniture, additional dream islands, a hotel, and even bulk crafting would find their way to players in January of 2026. After an endless stretch of radio silence from Nintendo and years of seemingly futile begging from the community for more ACNH content, our collective prayers were finally answered. The fanbase had successfully smuggled another update from the game's basement. We got what we wanted, folks. It actually happened. Or, at least, we got an update. If you've been in the ACNH sphere for a long time, you may remember the absolute uproar that used to go down when word of an update was let loose like a feral hog. There was excitement, there was frantic "Where's Brewster" posting, theories, data mining. Of course, there were critiques, but the general enthusiasm often controlled the vibe of community spaces. 3.0, on the other hand, has been noticeably different. Don't get me wrong, there has been plenty of joy and surprise, but the speed that it died down and the level of apathy felt more prominent in discussions. The reaction online was muted in comparison to what I remember going down back in the glory days. Okay, that is a little dramatic, I just didn't hear about it that much. Now, as the release date for 3.0 rapidly approaches, I've found myself kind of curious. Was the lack of fanfare for this update due to the obvious surface level reasons, or something different? Maybe something a bit deeper. TLDR, the vibe is off, and today I'd like to talk about it. Let's get crackin', shall we? Now, as much as I have tried to spelunk into the deepest, most horrible 127 hours ass caves of the Animal Crossing space, I am one single member of a large community that has a wide range of opinions. Amazingly, I happen to have access to a sliver of that community, and you guys were kind enough to answer a survey I put out about 3.0. So, in order to give a more well-rounded look at this situation, I will be pulling from my big old bank of your thoughts throughout this video. Thank you guys for your help as always, it is so appreciated. Don't go bald, don't die. First of all, there are a few possible, easily visible, knee-jerk explanations for why the response to this update leaned more apathetic. Number 1, the most obvious, is that the announcement came well over 5 years into ACNH's lifespan. Duh. When the update itself is actually released, it will be only 2 months removed from the game's 6th birthday. Despite the fact that I feel like I've been living in a time capsule blur for the past 6 years, time has in fact moved. For a massive chunk of video games, player numbers will have dwindled pretty significantly at this point in its run. There are plenty of exceptions to this rule, but for a game like Animal Crossing that doesn't have indefinite updates, you're going to see both long-time player numbers and new purchases gradually drop off over time. Interests and trends will change over the span of 6 years, and so will the lives of consumers. Notably, we aren't in COVID lockdown anymore either. But if y'all keep refusing to vaccinate your children, we might have a measles one for the next Animal Crossing release if you want. Like I said earlier, the 2.0 update, aka the proposed final update, was released in 2021, which leaves a 4-year gap of squat in terms of word from Nintendo. It's important to note that this gap wasn't meant to be a gap at all, because we were never promised another update. Some people held faith that Nintendo was just pulling a little prank. I was not one of them, but some people did. If we go off what we were told though, nobody was expecting any further movement. While I do think that this stretch of time had an effect on player reception, I don't think the wait was necessarily the culprit for the community's reaction. Instead, I think it could be how Nintendo approached the update system as a whole. One possible reference for this could be New Leaf's update timeline. ACNL, which had a worldwide release in 2013, received the massive Welcome Amiibo expansion 3 years later in 2016. Welcome Amiibo was the first and only major content update for the game, adding everything from new villagers to mini-games to a quest system to the campground. In all honesty, it wasn't that much different in terms of features from the 2.0 updates and 3.0 updates we've been seeing for ACNH. Welcome Amiibo was received incredibly well by the community despite being released 3 full years after the game's initial launch. The new content brought back plenty of players, helping to flesh out an already well-received gameplay experience, and was widely considered to be a huge improvement to the base game. The gap didn't really matter here, and I think a few factors contributed to that, the main one being that New Leaf was not released unfinished. I am in no way saying that New Horizons was a bad game upon launch or is a bad game now, but it was released with the intention of years of regular updates. This was, in my opinion, Nintendo shooting itself directly in the foot in terms of longevity. The updates worked well to create hype for New Horizons while they were happening, but the game itself was missing features to keep busy in the meantime. This meant that the attention came in bursts, and the title itself felt like an ongoing work in progress. When you see a game being built up rather than releasing in a complete state, it kind of feels like it will never truly be complete. When the update stopped a year in, it was less of a final building block being placed and more of a sensation of the process being abandoned. New Leaf, on the other hand, was released as a full game, and a very good game at that. Even if Welcome Amiibo was originally intended to be the final full release of the game, nobody knew that. Constant updates weren't needed to continue making the structures like they were for New Horizons, which gave Welcome Amiibo the skin of an add-on rather than a bone being added to an incomplete skeleton. The 3 years didn't feel like a silence because nobody was expecting or in dire need of noise. Welcome Amiibo was a treat, not a necessity. That is just my hypothesis though, that's my little pet theory, so I wanted to see what you guys thought as well. In the previously mentioned survey, I asked if you thought the 3.0 update came out too late to truly add to the game's experience, and the answers were very interesting. At nearly half of the answer pie, 47.2% of you selected somewhat, with yes and no fairly even at 26.4% and 22.5% respectively. I also added an other option for you to yap if you pleased, where the sentiment tended to lean no, but I don't know exactly what this will add to the game. I honestly think that the answers skewing towards somewhat could be another sign of a generally meh response. Also, in a result that I think is surprising to nobody, the more hours a survey taker had in New Horizons, the more likely they were to answer yes to this question. My personal thought is that in the context of games in general, no, this update isn't too late, but in the context of New Horizons and the way they went about updates, it was always going to create vitriol when they stopped. Leaving fans with a game that felt unfinished and then suddenly dropping another add-on half a decade later would probably make players who felt abandoned ponder on those feelings again. So yeah, the timing ended up not being great, but it maybe could have been avoided with a different initial approach. There's also the elephant in the room of the Switch 2 coming out between updates. I've used that elephant image in a video before, but I'm gonna use it again because I like it. It's funny. Would you take that joy away from me, you sick fuck? I heard a lot of people theorizing for quite some time that the next Animal Crossing game would be a launch title for the new console because of ACNH's success. Do I think that would have been a brilliant idea? Absolutely. Was I ever under the impression that they would do that? I say this with all the love in my heart, with all of the kindness and grace. Are we thinking about the same company right now? Does that sound like something Nintendo would do? I'm not making fun of you. Nintendo like Joy-Con still drift on the Switch 2 Nintendo? They would do that. This update and the ACNH Switch 2 upgrade pack are probably pretty solid proof that we'll be waiting a while for the next installment in the series, which is certainly disappointing. But all I can hope is that this means they're taking their sweet time making it truly special. Speaking of the Switch 2 upgrade pack, I do very much understand the bristly reaction to the fact that you have to fork up money for it. With the price of the Switch 2 itself and the lack of games available for it currently, the upgrade pack does feel like a bit of an extra fuck you to the consumer. Can't argue with that. Anyway, we've finally arrived at the meat of this situation, the actual features in the update. As I'm writing this script, and hopefully as it goes up, the update has not yet been released, so the public reaction may change and shift when we get more information about it. If you haven't seen the direct itself yet, I highly suggest you watch it before we get into this section to get the full context, as I won't touch on everything. The biggest pieces of this update are the addition of the hotel, dream islands that can be decorated with friends, Rossetti's island demolition services, new villagers, and bulk crafting. The hotel will act as an on-island version of Happy Home Paradise, it seems, where you're able to decorate rooms and earn currency for it. Villagers will be able to visit your island and stay in these rooms, but it's unclear whether or not you'll be able to invite them to move in campsite style. Multiple gaming news websites have reported on this, and they can't seem to agree on whether or not it's possible, which is interesting. The additional Dream Island feature will give you up to 3 islands to terraform on your own or with friends, which is my personal favorite part. Rossetti's new functions are a sort of soft reset option. You're able to clear your island off and start fresh without needing to go through the hell that is the beginning of the game again like you do with a hard restart. The other stuff is what it says on the tin, basically. In the survey, I asked all of you which major feature you were most excited for, and the highest margin went towards the hotel at 41.1%, with Dream Islands in second place at 26.1%. This actually surprised me quite a bit since I've seen my fair share of lukewarm reactions to the hotel due to the HHP similarities. The majority of these new features do center around island decorating, as does the game itself, which has been a topic of criticism from a lot of longtime fans. I probably don't need to tell you that the older games were not primarily designing sims and were more so life and social sims, and that interactive immersive element is what a lot of players hold dear about the series. As Animal Crossing has veered off into this new territory, the small town feel has faded further and further into the background, which has been a disappointment for many. So, when I posed a question about whether or not this update provided what the community really wanted to all of you, I definitely had a prediction of what you would say. This time, I was pretty spot on with it. I made this part of the survey a long-form text answer because I don't think thoughts on this that have been boiled down to just yes or no without any elaboration would help untangle this. So I read through each and every answer, and the overwhelming response was no, this update was not what the community wanted. Your answers gave a lot of different explanations, but all of them had great perspectives and very interesting notes. I agree, they should add Zendaya. Of course, many of you mentioned that this new update was not a satisfying fix for these social aspects of the game that really do need grease. One fantastic point that I saw brought up a few times was that the additional features catered more towards the part of ACNH's audience, the builders, that would theoretically already be quite content with what they had. I also saw plenty of you bring up the sentiment that nothing would truly sate the community, period, because there was a layer of bitterness that soured any new content. But I also asked you guys to rate your satisfaction with the game before and after the update using a 1 through 10 star scale. Pre-update, the average was 6.79 out of 10 stars, and the predicted post-update average was 7.62. So, the overall opinion on ACNH gained almost a full star. There is a clear difference here between personal opinion and the perception of the community's opinion, and I think that's pretty telling in regards to what thoughts we see most often. Now, there is a detail that makes the data I have here very biased, and that is the fact that I'm a whiny bitch. I tend to complain about everything, and my scripted videos aren't often all that kind to Nintendo. So, my audience is probably a hell of a lot more willing to critique choices made with ACNH. But a large majority of video essays nowadays, even just in the Animal Crossing community, tend to be made with a critical lens. There's been a large uptick of detailed videos breaking down why this game's reception has shifted. I like those videos, and I often make those videos. This got me thinking though, with these videos picking apart pieces of media strand by strand becoming more popular and more profitable, we are surrounding ourselves with a lot more negative viewpoints than positive ones. Could the rising trend of critical dissection be fueling the community's bitterness too? And is that a bad thing or a needed thing? Is most of our content consumption in today's climate just anger for anger's sake? Well, yeah, that's what Twitter exists for. Never mind. I'm not saying heavy critique is bad at all. I often think it's very warranted. But I'm curious, how much of this is impacted by what we're being shown, what we're making? Did our resentment grow as time went by, or did we have to build it up by hand? In any case, we don't have all the info yet, and I'm personally very excited to see what we actually end up getting. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of this if you're willing to share. Thank you to everyone who contributed to my survey. You rock, and I'd give you a little dog-shaped eraser if I could, and you could eat it if you wanted to. And also, thank you for all of the kind words you guys put in my little answer box. That's so nice. I love you. Huge thank you to my members as well. Your support means the world to me. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up. Hopefully I can get it out before January 15th. Slap me if I don't. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate you so much, and I will see you all next time. Stay safe, stay wonderful, my friends, and goodbye.